Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself and Mike. And today, there's been another rumour coming out, Mike, around David Moyes and his future at West Ham, regardless of what results happen. So let's dive into it and find out a little bit more about what could potentially be happening this summer. Yep, so the latest rumour in kind of West Ham rumour windmill season is around David Moyes once again, and it could potentially be that he will not be our manager, regardless of whether we win the Europa Conference League and stay up this season. And just to give you guys some context of where it's come from, obviously from Graham Bailey originally on 90-Minute Football, and Toby Cudworth's done an article on it. Kind of says, as things stands, West Ham are planning for a future without David Moyes. The feeling is that regardless of whether the club stay up or win the Europa Conference League, a change is needed this summer to turn things around and push forward. Now, always, take these things with a pinch of salt because rumors will happen. This will come out and there'll be, a conflicting article probably in a couple of days. But overall, Mike, do you think, regardless of whether it's true, do you think that this would be the sensible thing to do? And you kind of agree with what's being said?
Yeah, I think it would be contradictory if I turned around now and said I didn't agree with that. Yeah, I've been pretty clear in my view on this. I do think for all involved, this would be the best idea. Should we win it, it gives Moyes the chance to finally state that, winning what he does, because he now has a trophy to back it up. He can leave with his head held high. Will be our most successful manager, regardless of anyone's personal opinion. He will be our most successful manager in about 30 odd years. And it means that everyone can save face. You can turn around and say, from a board, there's lots of things that you can say in which to justify it. It's like, we want to thank him for obviously winning the Europa Conference League and securing our place in Europa League. But having said that, our form in the Premier League was not good enough over the duration of the season, and other aspects such as player integrations didn't go the way we wanted to. We feel a step forward and moving on or a parting of ways is the right time, especially with Moyes going into his final year of his contract. So they have an legitimate out based on the season. I know the Moyes in lot will be, well, it's ridiculous to sack a manager who's just won a trophy. That is true. You could look at it that way, but you could also look at it as the bread and butter is the Premier League. And if you are employing a manager who had to do quite a heavy turnover of players this season and was invested in with about to the tune of about 150 plus million pounds, and your whole season was a relegation battle and struggled to integrate players, and also there were some rumours of falling out. Do you want to go via the same route again when you're going to have to probably invest the same amount of money once again? Because there's going to be a lot of players. Have to wait and see if you can integrate them, potentially having another battle if they don't do it. Or again, you're going to lose face in maybe selling some of those players that you bought in for big money, or at least one of those players for big money in the summer because the manager couldn't get to work, couldn't manage how to utilize them, couldn't manage how to use them. So I think it's a bit of a saving face thing. And ultimately, again, we keep saying this, but there could be a new regime in the summer. And as part of that, it may be what they may want to clear the decks, so to speak. And start.
Let's get into the kind of what the article suggests as to why this is going to happen, or why this could potentially happen, regardless of what Moyes does in this season. It kind of starts off by saying they're likely to part company, regardless of whether they retain a Premier League status, as we just mentioned. But as we get into kind of the bulk of the article, it's basically saying that a large portion of fans have been calling for this for months, and it's actually been David Sullivan, the majority owner, who has backed Moyes to get the club out of this trouble. And, it's quite an interesting point. Again, we've probably mentioned it before, but he believes there is no better manager equipped at dealing with this situation right now that we find ourselves in. So what do you think of that? Because does that just kind of sum up David Sullivan's tenure at West Ham, that he's not going to, he's had so many times this season to change it, but right now in his mind, there is no one better out there than David Moyes to get us out of the position we're in, even though he's the one that's put us in this situation in the first place. Just a quick message to say, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, as we are posting regularly and it would really help us out. And yeah, leave a like on the video too. Let's get back into it.
Personally, I think Sullivan doesn't want to pay the money in which to remove David Moyes. As we saw with Pellegrini, they also then removed all of the scouting. Now they brought in about 3 to 4 scouts as well. So in their mind, which is ridiculous, is, we need to remove all the scouting. We now need to remove the manager, rather than you just remove the manager. You can actually keep that coaching staff on unless the new coach says, I want to bring in my own people.
Do you think that's rare to happen these days? That, a lot of the time it will be the manager and the coaching staff that goes as well, but sometimes the assistant will take charge until a new regime comes in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and then it's a matter of whether that regime is comfortable working with the existing. I don't think it's as simple as you just get rid of everyone. If the manager, if you kind of talk to the players, if the players feel comfortable with his supporting cast, so to speak, and they feel that they can work with them and that there's going to be a change in mentality, then you maybe go, okay, then in that case, the manager isn't gelling, isn't working. We'll remove that element. We'll then promote from within until a time as to find a replacement.
So you think it would be someone like Kevin Nolan or Mark Warburton to come in on a temporary basis?
It'd more likely be Warburton, based on the fact that he's had a lot more managerial experience. Nolan might get the nod because, again, he has managed previously at lower level. Hasn't gone so well, but sometimes it doesn't go so well at certain clubs. Sometimes you achieve, sometimes you don't. But also he's a former captain, so he may get the nod as well. So I think it'd be a matter of, well, which way do you go? Do you go Warburton because of the experience of, championship football and so on? Or do you go for maybe the younger guy who knows some of the players, he's been around some of those players in the past, also someone who probably has a bit more of an affinity with the fans, so you can kind of maybe someone to get behind and give more of a chance. I think personally, I would say you'd give it to Nolan if he was going to go down that route, and then you ask Warburton to support him because he has the experience. And then I think that's the dynamic you go to, because that's more palatable for the fans. And I think ultimately you go for what's more palatable.
Do you think that, but from what we've heard there about Sullivan basically saying Moyes is the guy that he would trust to get out of this situation, do you think that because in his mind, he isn't really looking elsewhere to bring in, say, a long-term project that maybe is why it's being held off till the summer? So in his mind, it's Moyes or potentially Warburton/Nolan as a temporary fix.
I think it's as simple as this. It's Moyes or £7 million to remove him from his existing contract, plus then the removal of his staff, which probably add on another £2 to £3 million. Then I need to go find a manager. So that could cost me. He's never played Compo. Let's get that straight. So he's not going to do that. So he then has to go out to the free market.
Yeah.
So he's saying that there's no better in the free market. The free market is not interested in the short-term deals. They want a bit more job security. Fair play to them.
Yeah.
So if he does go to one of those in the free market and goes to maybe a bit of a higher tier one, he then has to pay an extra premium because of where we are. So it's to get them to agree to maybe to a shorter term deal, or to agree to a short term deal that is active. Yeah. Again, you need to do that. But also on the other side of it is, well, if he outwardly is saying to people, I don't have plans on leaving, and his plan is to leave, you don't then want to burden the new owner with the then cost of getting rid, because that could also be the problem. So I think the truth of the matter is, we had a period in which to do it. If we knew there was going to be a takeover, which most likely they did, and they probably have known for a time there's going to be a takeover probably this summer, or at least a redistribution of shares, then they should have acted in January, December time, because that would have meant the new owner, who we all think is probably going to be, or at least a majority shareholder, which could then, in effect, control the club in Kretinsky, could have then said, this is the guy I want us to go with. This is the route we're going down. Let's make the move now.
Yeah, I think it is another kind of telling point towards this summer that there is bigger changes that could be happening, because, for this to come out, we don't know how true it is, but for someone to potentially win a European competition for West Ham, and like you mentioned, arguably go down as one of the most successful managers in our history, to then, still in the back of your mind thinking, okay, well, we're still going to move on this summer. It kind of points to other factors that could be happening in the summer. And as we go into this in this article again, I mean, at the back on the bottom paragraph there, it's kind of saying that the backing of Moyes is highly unlikely to extend, and he will be replaced in the dugout regardless of whether or not the club remain a Premier League outfit. And, it kind of just ends with another point here which I found quite, I think pretty true. But it also says, there was concerns over whether Moyes' tactics and play style is limiting the ability to perform right now, with some of the club's most prominent players expressing frustration to the media about how West Ham is set up. So obviously that's referring to Rice, that's referring to Bowen and Antonio when they've said they're isolated up top, that kind of thing. So all of the signs are there that there are deeper issues underneath what's happening on the surface and in the actual dressing room itself. Forget what could happen in the summer, forget all of that change that could potentially be happening. Right now, there's an issue with Moyes and those players. And that's why I think Sullivan is now at a point where, okay, we've got 12 Premier League matches left. I'm going to stick with him. Hopefully, he'll just kind of scrape through. I don't have to pay that money that you mentioned about paying Moyes off and also bringing someone else in. And, we might even win a European competition because West Ham are now favourites to do that. So I think in the back of his mind, it is just a sit back and hope mission and just try and get over the line for this season. And then in the summer, like you mentioned before, there could be big changes happening.
Exactly, mate. It's a £100 million worth of gamble. West Ham go down to the Championship. You can kiss that £650 million valuation goodbye. But then I think we can also kiss goodbye potentially a takeover. I do not believe for a moment Sullivan will sell West Ham as a Championship team. He would only sell when they're in the Premier League, when their value's at the highest. Yeah. So if we were to be relegated, strap in, because you're going to have more years of David Sullivan in charge at West Ham. He may dilute some of his shares and sell them off, but he will still be remaining at the club.
Yeah.
So our only hope is to limp through to the end. As we've said before, it needs to be a very clear decision. It should have been long before. I think X has come out now. Obviously, X is sometimes he gets misquoted, but the what has been put out by other accounts is essentially that they are looking to back Moyes. They want him to succeed this season and potentially beyond. And I think potentially is the main word there. And I think that means that's coming from a certain side of the board, because again, don't want to go through the rigmarole of sacking, paying compensation, and all of that kind of stuff. But then there was also but there is a feeling that Southampton should defeat come to Southampton, it could be the last. So I think there's been a sudden realization that if Southampton win, obviously Southampton will leapfrog us. We'd likely be bottom of the table going into the last 13 games. We've arguably one of the most talented teams we've had, other than when we got relegated with 42 points.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Sullivan will not want to be known as the guy who took West Ham back down again. He will want to be known as the guy who was there for us to get a European Championship, so he can basically say, "I told you so. I made you successful."
Yeah,
which is probably more in spite than because of. But ultimately, I think the direction is the summer needs a complete change and clear out from top to bottom. Now, if the board go, fantastic, or at least an element of that board goes, I still think they'll hold a minority share, if I'm being brutally honest. But as long as they're not in control, I could accept that. But we need a new direction in the boardroom. We need actual ambition, not face ambition, as has been said. We need genuine dialogue and improvement around the stadium and the surrounding area. Again, that needs to come into the fold of the club in which to help that. That could also mean greater community benefits. Just look at Man City for those saying, well, how to benefit? Look at Man City and the benefits that they have had in their local community by that partnership agreement between the local council and Man City, and the incredible work they do actually within their community, to be fair. And also in the dugout, we need something new, something fresh, and something that makes those players believe not only in themselves, but also plays to their strengths. At the moment, we're not necessarily playing to their strengths.
Yeah.
To quote Soufal, we have the ultimate pragmatist. I don't believe we have pragmatic players in our squad.
Yeah. I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it? We just need, I think the whole thing just needs fresh. And that's why this summer is like, this season is so critical because, like you mentioned, if we go down, Sullivan ain't going to want to sell. So this is probably the biggest 12 Premier League matches West Ham are going to have and have probably had since Sullivan took over. And now it's just a case of just staying above the relegation zone.
And also, I'm pretty sure there is a valuation set on the club as part of the investment from Kaczynski that goes up until this summer.
Yeah.
Now, if we go, that elapses, then Sullivan has no guarantee on what he or David Goldshares can earn. It will then be down to any kind of bidder to come in and say, no, this is the value and this is what you're getting. And if we continue to be a yo-yo club, the value that he's been able to set because of the recent success isn't going to be the case, especially with the faltering and diminishing kind of financial piece around the Olympic Stadium. That could, if that falls into default, we could be in serious trouble as in terms of having a venue to play at. So our stock and our value will plummet. And this is probably the one time the closest he's ever going to get to be getting, say, 650 million to 700 million for West Ham is probably this summer.
Well, we're going to see what happens with Moyes anyway. What do you guys think? Would you like to see Moyes turn it around after this season? If we do stay up and win the Conference League, for example, would you keep him at the club or would you be looking to move into a new direction? But yeah, big games to come up. Huge, important time for West Ham right now, and just hope we can do it. I hope Sullivan's masterclass pays off. Moyes keeps us up and we go fresh in the summer. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. Make sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And Mike, one thing left to say.
Come on, you Irons.